Hey there everyone. So the Giovanni event came out and it's a little tough. Once you get past very hard mode, it starts to become almost impossible to beat it if you're just playing with randoms, and even if you're playing with a coordinated team, there's a certain level of skill that you need so that you don't get wiped by either Mewtwo's ridiculous level of special attack or Solrock and Lunatone's ability to explode and wipe your entire team. So, with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and take a look at a couple of different things you can do to better survive the Giovanni event. Let's get started. So the first step, as you might expect, is team composition. This is going to be essential to actually clearing these stages, and this is something you decide before even attempting. Now, there are two characters that I would highly recommend that you try to obtain to be able to have a better chance against Giovanni. The first one of them is currently having a banner at the moment, and that is Grimsley. Now, the reason why I say Grimsley is one of the best characters to have for this fight is the fact that he has good physical attacks. He has his Night Slash, which is good for Lunatone. He's got a special attack, which is good for Solrock. And the most important thing is his ability Snatch, where, like the name implies, you take the buff from an enemy and you put it on yourself. This is a good way to mitigate the huge buffs Mewtwo gives to his team, and it also is able to buff your character on the same turn, so you don't have to waste as much time trying to buff yourself while you're getting attacked by Giovanni and the crew. So, he is probably one of the best options. I'd say he's better than Karen, who is somebody I'll get to in a little bit. But if you can't get Grimsley, there's a 3-star that is very handy in the same vein, and that is Bryson. Now, the reason why Bryson is handy, you might have actually seen some people taking him in if you've been playing the event today. It's because of Haze. Now, as you can see here, Haze negates and neutralizes the buffs for the entire enemy team. So essentially what you're doing is once Mewtwo applies his huge buff to everybody else, you can use Bryson to use Haze, and it completely wastes what Mewtwo did, and just sets everything back to 0. It mitigates the insane damage output they have to an extent, and while you're doing that, the rest of your team can be buffing themselves or starting attacking and dealing with Lunatone and Solrock to make the fight easier. In general, I think Bryson might be one of the best support, quote-unquote, units for this battle. He also can give himself Endure, which is handy, especially if you want to try and take a hit from, let's say, Giovanni's Mewtwo, and then be able to use Haze to take away his buff. Okay, now we're going to get into the medium picks of who you can take if you don't have Grimsley or Bryson. It is still completely doable to beat Giovanni with these characters. You just don't have the ease of getting rid of the buffs, so once you get into ridiculous levels of difficulty, it can be tough. The first of these is going to be Karen. Karen is another 5-star. From what I've noticed, a lot of people seem to have Karen when the game initially came out. I think she was one of the more common 5-stars to draw. But her Snarl is one of the most handy abilities here, as it does lower special attack by 1 stage for all of the enemies. It also hits all the enemies, so it's good to do small bits of damage over a period of time. And she also has Bite, which is good for Lunatone. The best thing I'd have to say about Karen is that you can use her Entertain the ability to shoot your special attack up 3 stages, then start doing Snarl to lower down their special attack, all the while building up your Unity attack should your teammates actually be attacking as well, which we hope they do. Unity attack is crucial for the Giovanni fight. If you aren't getting Unity attacks with your teammates, there is a good chance they are going to end up getting wiped along with you. So she is very handy to have. In general, she is one of the best balanced picks for that. Now, if any of you watched the little dev stream or dev video talking about this event, you remember they did recommend 2 free-to-play units for this, and those have been Sharon and Nanu. Now, Sharon has Stoutland, and Stoutland's best thing is the Bite, which is essential for taking down Lunatone. Lunatone's defense is his lowest stat, essentially. You also have the Apply Yourself ability, which does have minor heals as you damage opponents, and that is for the entire team on your side. So it is a little bit of helpful support. I have seen it come in handy where somebody would have been taken out if they didn't have the minor heal, slowly getting themselves up. So it makes you a little bit more durable, and in a fight where there's blizzards, earthquakes, and explosions going off, you need as much durability as you can get. So I do think Sharon is a pretty decent pick. Nanu has the same thing with Bite for Lunatone, but aside from that, Screech is another sort of situational thing that Nanu can provide. As it only costs 2 bars, it's actually pretty easy to throw out. The benefits to it is that you're lowering the physical defense of the person you are targeting, and this can be handy towards the end if you're fighting off against Mewtwo, where you can focus on just doing physical damage. The clip here is showing me doing Bullet Seed with Grovyle, which is physical attack, along with Houndoom trying to do his Dark Pulses while the Screech is in effect. It can be handy, it's just, in my opinion, a bit more situational. So you can go with Nanu. I would honestly say between the two of them, Sharon is a better pick. But again, it is your personal preference. If you'd rather go with Nanu, that is completely in your court to decide. I just think that Sharon is overall a better pick in this instance. But we will come to the final recommendation for a character that I have, and that would be Lyra with her Meganium. Now, I personally am biased towards this, as I use Lyra alongside with Brendan and Karen. And the big thing about Lyra that I think is pretty good for this is her Light Screen. So Light Screen is going to sort of take down the amount of damage they can do with special attacks. And Mewtwo, very heavy with special attack. I'm pretty sure that's all that he does is special. Same thing with Lunatone. The only one I'm not 100% sure of is Solrock. I think he's the only person that uses physical attack, so it is very handy to have something that mitigates the damage if you don't have someone like Grimsley or Bryson to just completely remove it. So that's very handy, and on top of that, she can go and give secondary buffs to everybody, so she can increase critical hits, or she can increase your speed, attack, and special attack all at once. It is only by a single stage because there's some dumb stuff about her needing to have Sunny Day out, because I guess they want Blaine to go along with her. But as it is now, she still is a pretty solid support, and I think would round out as one of the better options for this event. And general disclaimer as I end this section right here, if you want to go and use your own sync pair that you think will do perfectly fine, you are more than welcome to do so. These are just some helpful suggestions if you're struggling at the moment. I know when I first started fighting against Mewtwo, I had about a spree of 5 to 6 losses in a row. I could potentially try and blame my teammates, but at the end of the day, some of it was due to my team comp. And if you don't choose a team comp that is designed to handle situations that are given here, you're honestly going to have a much rougher time, and maybe not as much of a fun time. So hopefully some of these character suggestions are going to be helpful to you, and we're going to go ahead and move on to our second tip. So step number 2 is a pretty specific detail, but it's very important. It is who is being targeted. You'll notice this as soon as you start the battle. Mewtwo will go ahead and do his war cry, or whatever you want to call it, but he will face a certain direction. He will either look straight on at you, because you're always the center if you're the player, or look to the left, or look to the right. And this is essential, because that means that is the person who is going to be targeted for the next 2 to 3 hits. And why that matters is if you don't have somebody to mitigate the buffs, like Bryson or Grimsley, more than likely that person is going to be downed in 2 turns unless they switch out appropriately. So if it's you, and you're the one being targeted, and you know no one else is going to be able to take care of the buffs, what you need to do is switch out to your tank at that point. So always pay attention to which direction Mewtwo is facing so you know who's going to be taking the hits. You can't really fix your randoms getting KO'd because they're not paying attention, but at the very least, if you're being aware of what's going on, it should make it easier for you to keep your Pokemon in longer, and really that's all you can do when you're playing with randoms. So moving right along, we have the Unity attack as step number 3. Now, you don't have as much control over this if you're with randoms. If they're playing a lot more passive and buff heavy at the beginning, it's really hard to get the Unity to stack up and do it in time before Mewtwo's sync attack. But if they are playing a bit smarter and not potato-y, they're going to attack. And if you attack with them, you're able to get it and get some free damage on the table. It's really strong to take out Lunatone and Solrock early. And the most important thing, you may not know this, it resets the opponent. So what that means is if they have a move set to go off, say Mewtwo has a sync attack to come out, and you get the Unity attack right before them, it resets this computer to have to choose that option again. Why this is important is it gives you a second right after the Unity attack goes off to choose a move on your end to do before he gets his turn. So in the clip you're seeing right now, Mewtwo was about to use Psychic on my Houndoom, which possibly could have killed him. It could have also kept him with just a sliver of health, but as the Unity attack went off, it canceled his move, so it gave me a chance to go ahead and switch back over to Lyra. And with that, I saved Houndoom from taking any unnecessary damage, and this is a great trick you can use in any battle outside of fighting Mewtwo, but especially in this, if you want to try and keep your DPSs or your strikers, what have you, alive as long as you possibly can, make use of the Unity attack. I can't stress this enough.
I never hold back. Let's go!
The fourth step, and maybe the most detailed one I'll get into aside from the character selection, is to focus on the adds. What I mean by adds is the additional units, in this case the Lunatone and the Solrock. See, once you reach very hard mode when you're doing the Mewtwo fight, it becomes not really feasible to focus on Mewtwo initially when you try and take him down. The main reason for this is Solrock and Lunatone both have the ability to give a potion over to Mewtwo, so if you start doing damage to him, at a certain threshold they just heal him back up. So the best way to deal with them is to take out the adds, or essentially Solrock and Lunatone. That's the best advice I can give you. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of their moves. For Lunatone, he has Psychic, Blizzard, Explosion, and Potion. Now, just to get a disclaimer for the move Explosion, to my knowledge, they don't use it until after Mewtwo's sync attack has gone off. I believe they just save it for the second phase. The devs may have just decided when Giovanni uses his sync attack that you're supposed to start losing after that point for whatever reason, because Explosion essentially makes them lose all of their life, the Solrock or the Lunatones, in exchange for your entire team's life. So you and the two randoms or your friends are all going to be down by the attack. But I digress. The important part to note is that Lunatone has low physical defense. So moves such as Bite, such as Stone Edge from Olivia, are highly effective with dealing with Lunatone. I actually recommend you take care of him first, as his Blizzard is very annoying, and he gets very liberal with using that very early on. He seems to me to be the first major threat you're going to face at the beginning, aside from the buff that Mewtwo gives, which we've already explained what you can do with that. So, after Lunatone, you come to Solrock. Solrock has Rock Tomb, Earthquake, Potion, and Explosion. Last two just like Lunatone. He's the opposite, though, in the fact that his special defense is low. So Snarl, Leaf Storm's a very good option for him, are things that you should prioritize with dealing with him. I'd still say go for him second, because he doesn't seem to use Earthquake until right around the time that Mewtwo would be getting his sync attack anyways. He holds off a bit more than Lunatone. He's a little bit less aggressive in my opinion. But you can take it however way you want. I just think that going Lunatone to Solrock has been working better for me. But that's honestly up to you, and whatever your randoms are deciding to attack. Finally, we're going to get to Mewtwo. Now, Mewtwo's special attack is absurd after he gets his sync attack if you have no way to mitigate his buffs. And even if you do, a lot of times his sync attacks will just, or his moves after the sync attack will start immediately taking you out from 100% to 0. He'll use Fire Blast, he'll use Thunder, Blizzard becomes an option, and then Psychic. So he starts to use all that to just wipe out your team. It really comes down to needing to get rid of those buffs or having the amount of damage to take him out shortly after he uses the sync move, because if you let it go too long, he's going to wipe out your team. I've had a couple of matches where I've gotten just down to Mewtwo and no one had enough damage to take him out because the buffs gave him increased resistance to damage, so he just wiped everybody. So speed is the key. That's honestly what it comes down to. You just got to figure out the best way to rapidly take him out. And to wrap things up, the final tip, as you'll see right here, Dusclops is using his sync move on Mewtwo, and if you'll notice, Mewtwo's aggro has changed over to him. An effect of sync moves, if you didn't know already, is that whenever you attack the main boss in multiplayer, the target will then be the person who used the sync move. So in this case, the Dusclops became the target for Mewtwo. This can be used strategically. If you do not want to be taking damage, you can choose to refrain from using your sync move and have an ally do it. Or if you're the tank, say if you're Lyra with Meganium, you may want to use your lower damaging sync move so that the Grimsley that is on your team can get more damage in while you're soaking up the hits. And I mean, that's pretty much it. That's the major 5 tips that I have for trying to beat this legendary event. Let me know in the comments below if any of these helped you out or if you have some additional suggestions, and just let me know if you enjoyed the event. Personally, I think it's cool that they're letting you unlock 5-star units aside from the main story. I think this is pretty inventive. The unfortunate side effect, though, is this does show the glaring issue with Pokemon Masters Combat. It's very strikers heavy, where there's a couple of very strong units in the game that if you don't have them, you're going to be struggling a lot, and if you do have them, there's really no reason to try anybody else. I doubt anyone was actually using Bryson before this point, and once they realized that Bryson was the key to negating Mewtwo's buff, then he actually started getting play. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to see more diversity. I know they do have some patches coming along in the future where you can start customizing things. I'm kind of hopeful to see what they do have with that, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks so much. Leave a like or a follow or a comment, anything you'd like if you enjoyed the video. And Christmas Rosa hype! Take it easy.
Do it! Do your thing. Keep your wits about you.
Give it your best shot!